So I know I shouldn't put 4 copies of Back to Basics in a deck, and you probably know that too. But here I am playing it, and you clicked on the video, so like, it's clear what we all want, right? Hello folks, Phil Gallagher, aka ThrabenU here for another Legacy video, and today I have been challenged to throw 4 copies of Back to Basics into the main deck of some deck by Edison. Now, when I think about the 2 colorless and 1 blue cost of Back to Basics, my immediate thought is Ancient Tomb Shell. But generally speaking, if you are playing blue Ancient Tomb in Legacy, Stompy is not exactly the route that you want to go. You probably want to go like the stock up and show and tell route, or maybe some sort of Patchwork Automaton, Kappa Cannoneer, Emery, Urza Saga shell. And I wanted to do something that would make Back to Basics good. I wanted to make it so that when we resolved Back to Basics, we would probably win the game. And I think for that to happen, Tempo is actually going to be our best shell. We're going to have a few restrictions here in building around Back to Basics. Number 1, we probably don't get to get cute with our lands. We can play something like Wasteland still, I think. But beyond that, I don't know that we get to play with Surveil lands, for example. The downside there is very, very real. And I want to be able to have a threat in play prior to this, if at all possible. And that's where cards like Delver of Secrets are going to come in. One of the challenges of being a mono blue deck here, though, is going to be that your removal options aren't great. They are either limited in some capacity, or slightly awkward, or potentially could be destroyed. So I found a mono blue tempo shell and slotted in a handful of copies of Back to Basics. This is me combining a couple of different shells that I saw. I believe that there is another blue enchantment that does something very, very similar to Stasis Field that I could be playing in this slot, but I absolutely do not remember what the name of that card is. So if you know what I'm talking about, throw that in the YouTube comments. I would appreciate it. But I know I was on the wrong side of the battlefield from it within the last week or two. So it might be fresher in your mind than in mine. Now, to make it so that we have early game interaction, we're actually going to be kind of going up on both counter spells and cantrips from where a normal blue deck might normally be. So we are going to be really good at filling the graveyard for things like Murktide Regent, and I am going to max out on Brazen Borrower here in game 1, since our removal isn't great. So the goal is either stick an early threat or answer some early problems, stick a Back to Basics, and then take whatever managed to sneak its way into play out of play. The sideboard is not maxing out on anything, it's instead taking a bunch of situational cards. Engineered Explosives is maybe not the best when you are only in one color, but this is something that I can do to answer Urza Saga tokens as well as the artifacts that come with them in a single card. I was thinking about like this and Dress Down in these slots and Settled on EE. I think that one's pretty close though. And True Name Nemesis was something, when it was played against me recently, I went, oh damn, I don't have an answer to that card. So having a couple of extra sticky threats for when the games go long seems pretty decent to me. We have a handful of overlapping but not actually identical graveyard hate cards for when we play against things like Reanimator. And we have a bunch of options so that we can switch around our removal suite / counterspell suite if we need to. So this is very much experimental. We'll see how just ramming Back to Basics into a mono blue tempo shell ends up going. Folks, if you need any Magic cards, please consider checking out my sponsor, toamagic.com, to support me. They're great. Promo code ThrabenU will save you 5% on your order, and you always get free shipping. Those are 2 great perks already, but their customer service also rules. And if you put in special requests, sometimes they're able to hunt down some cool stuff for you and add them to your orders. With that being said, let's battle. Phil from the future here. This is a really good league. I'm very happy to announce that. This is one of those times where if you don't make it through the whole video, you might want to loop back later. There are some incredibly tight matches of Magic today. Well played on both sides of the table. Single points of life mattering. So enjoy the show. All right, our opponent says hello. They're a big fan of the channel. Hope they're a fan of Delver of Secrets too. We've got Delver backed by 2 Wastelands and Force of Will. This is a very, very strong tempo start. If I use these to blow up lands, I won't actually be great at casting back to basics, but hopefully I won't need back to basics if I just nuke all of my opponent's starting lands. You can ponder all day, friend. I think I am actually into brainstorming right here to always flip this Delver. Ooh, that's a back to basics. That probably gets pitched to Force of Will, honestly. Let's put a Wasteland 2 down and flip to this other Brainstorm. Oh, my volume is very, very loud. All right, that's fixed for me. Wasteland your trop, and Punchy's in for 3. Opponent's at 17. I have 2 Force of Wills and a Daze backing up this Delver. Feels good. I have no problem with just playing this here. And then with the Delver, opponent is at 14. If my opponent doesn't do anything cool, I will probably just cast a Brainstorm at their end of turn, trying to set up back to basics. I don't know quite what my opponent is playing yet. Could be something like Beans, could be something like Nadu, could be Blue-Green Show and Tell. We'll maybe get a little information this turn. That is not a basic land. We are in Nadu colors. There is an Up the Beanstalk. I think I am into just hard casting a Daze on that. And then if I spike a natural land drop, I have back to basics. Oh, shit. That's nice. Edison, this is the dream. This is the dream right here. 10. Fetch. Island. B2B. Backed by Force of Will. Nice. Now, my Wasteland doesn't untap, but the damage is done. Theory immediately proven as working. True name Nemesis. Get in here, bud. So Dismember is probably not killing a bunch of my opponent's creatures. The Urrows and Murktide Regents of the worlds just aren't eating it to Dismember. Stasis Field works, but is a little awkward versus Leyline Binding. I'm into Unlicensed Hearse to check my opponent's graveyard. Force of Negation isn't crazy, and neither is another answer to something like an Urrow. Although, honestly, playing a Surgical as an answer to Urrow is probably fine, too. Spell Pierce is good. Spell Snare hits up the Beanstalk and some other random stuff like Life from the Loam. I really like the Spell Pierces. In theory, backing up a back to basics with Daze and Force of Will and such is really, really, really strong. A Stasis Field is not actually going to be... No, it's fine versus Murktide Regent because it's going to give it Defender. Though, it would be a big booty Defender. Hard for like a Delver to get through that, or maybe even my own Murktide Regents. Might just go down like 1 Preordain here. I can see 1 Spell Snare being correct instead. This is unquestionably a worse hand than the first one, but I don't really think it's bad. Okay. That card fucks. That's so good for my opponent. It obviously doesn't do anything yet, but it unquestionably will. Now there's just the question of, like, am I willing to wait a turn to deny them a mana on that? And I think the answer is yes. I don't think I need to ponder immediately, but I will absolutely Spell Pierce and up the Beanstalk that comes down. Alright, we're just chilling, which is, I suppose, fine. And now there comes this game of, like, how much do I want to try to play around this? I think not that much. I think this is just Delver with Spell Pierce available. And if my opponent gets a little greedy and just goes for white removal instantly, I get super paid off for the Spell Pierce. They can wait till their turn to, like, much better play around it with Carpet of Flowers mana. But that may or may not actually be correct for them to do. Alright, Delver saved, but Carpet of Flowers is going to give my opponent a big mana advantage. That's black. Bowmasters is not great for me here. Hey, it's Bowmasters. And that's a free Bowmasters, essentially, too. Opponent did not use the rest of their mana. You're a defender, bud. If that ability is shut off, that'll allow me to, like, ponder next turn. Maybe we'll end up pondering into Murktide Regent, which would be cool. And my opponent just kind of fills out their domain. It's something big. Bargain. That's happening. So opponent hit another land drop here. So things like Up the Beanstalk are still on the table for this turn cycle. And I'm going to take 1 from this Orc Army token, which is not that big of a deal. I've got good stuff coming. So I'll ponder. Again, Bowmaster does not currently have its abilities. The new Bowmasters, which I'm going to say no to. Just daze that, bouncing an island. So if I take a fetch land, or no, I already have 5 in graveyard counting the ponder. Force of Will protecting this Murktide Regent is like absolutely valid right now. Yeah, I think I am into this. Drop this, play Murktide Regent. We'll get 3 instants and sorceries there. And then I will presumably Force of Will, some removal spell, pitching Murktide Regent, and then use 2 Brazen Borrowers to hopefully tempo out the game from there. Yeah, that's fine. Wow, a Gyre Reach Sanitarium. That's an interesting flex slot. Yeah, I'm going to attempt to say no to that. Opponent has enough mana that Hardcast Force of Will could be on the table. Negative. In post-sideboard games, sometimes Beans will end up going down counterspells because they just have more removal to bring in. So there might not actually be all that many counterspells remaining in my opponent's deck. I don't think I am going to bounce Carpet here. Draw a card, discard a card, we'll discard that land. Keep the Brazen Borrowers. Opponent discards a land. Oh, it's another Red Elemental Blast. And unfortunately, we can't bounce our own creatures here. That's just happening, but we can just use Brazen Borrower as a 3/1 flyer. Like, that's totally fine. Sure. Is this what the game is about? With Carpet of Flowers here, it does not feel like that is what the game is about. Just another land drop from my opponent. I'm just going to respond to that by putting Brazen Borrower in play. I'm a little nervous that Lorien Revealed was very, very good for my opponent. And I will take that hit from the Orc. I can't do anything about it. I can only block creatures with flying. Do I play that island or hold that island for Brainstorm? I think I'll play it. There's some times where I end up using a Brazen Borrower bounce ability. Yeah. Do I just want to cast Brazen Borrower as a creature right now before my opponent gets an extra cantrip? If they Force of Will or Solitude or whatever afterwards? I think I do. It's just awkward if specifically Murktide Regent follows this up, because then I can't bounce the Murktide out of the way anymore. Planes from my opponent. Have another bargain. Yeah. This one is slipping away fast, which is not unexpected, right? This is turn 7, and my opponent has had Carpet of Flowers in play from turn 1 or 2. Yep. That is probably the death blow. I'll keep playing for a few turns. I think I misplayed recently, though. In playing the island, I was not taking into account my opponent's Gyre Reach Sanitarium, which they have been aggressively activating. I think this is a time where I just cast this and just eat the Bowmaster trigger. Curse is probably not good enough here. I'm going to take a random draw, get pinged. I'm going to hold that, I guess, for Gyre Reach Sanitarium, but now my opponent has Gyre Reach plus Bowmasters, which is pretty solid. It seems to be one of the things their deck is built around. Ugh. Some of the mono blue tempo lists that I was looking at had like 3 copies of Gutshot in the sideboard for Bowmaster matchups in particular, and you can see why. I think the way that I win from here involves me drawing True Name Nemesis. Ooh, geez. Now there's Narset, Gyre Reach. That's not great. And they picked up a swords. Yeah. Dak Faden? So we have gone deep with like the Bowmasters, Narset, Dak Faden stuff. So like I'm just going to have to discard my entire hand here. I believe my top card needs to be True Name Nemesis, or I am cooked, as the children say. They just take 6 here, and I'm dead the following turn. Polluted Delta ain't it. So I had a decisive win in my favor, followed by a decisive loss in my opponent's favor. Do I need something like Hydroblast to fight against my opponent's Rebs? Spell Snare is still good versus Bowmasters. Bell Pierce is good against my opponent's deck, generally speaking, until we reach the late game. Thinking about this stuff. I'm going to go down the Fluster. It misses a bunch of the enchantments and planeswalkers. And go up a Bowmaster answer. And I think these preordains are pretty flexible. I'm just going to go down on things that trigger Bowmasters and are stopped by Narset and go up on a few generic answers. Do I want like another Stasis Field? I'm not like the most excited to be playing that card. Let's say no. I'm going to assume that multiple copies of Back to Basics will generate a keepable hand. I would love to have my Delver or my cheap counter spells to start things off, but my opponent does not appear to have very many non-Red Elemental Blast / Pyroblast type counterspells left in the deck, so my spells are pretty likely to resolve. You may ponder. Force of Will is great. Very happy for that draw. That's another land from my opponent. Yeah, I am good here. So we will go Island. More other Island. Wasteland. Throw down Back to Basics. I have Daze and Force of Will backing this up. That's fine. It is in play. Now that doesn't mean a lot. My opponent can, like, fetch, get a red source, and attempt to blast this, which requires me to respond with Force of Will. That's pretty good for my opponent. Brainstorming directly into Bowmasters here is awkward. I think I am just going to pass the turn. And if my opponent fetches, I maybe brainstorm in response. Nah, I'll wait. Bayou. Okay, it is a Bowmasters. Now I will go ahead and brainstorm in response, I think. I will end up redrawing these lands, and that's fine. I think I let this hit me for a turn, and I dismember it later. That can leave up Hydroblast in the short term until I know whether or not I can safely drop Hydroblast. Kaito would be annoying here. Pick 2. Pick 2, that's fine. That's not Kaito. So now I don't need to hold up Hydroblast for a Pyroblast. So now I think I will go ahead and just dismember here. So that's 4 cards in graveyard. I am at the point where I can just cast a Murktide Regent. I don't think I am going to do that, though. I think I am going to go ahead and just lock up the thing that is hopefully winning me this game and pass the turn from here. It's another one. I think to get extra cards into my graveyard, I am okay with forcing that. Pitching a Hydroblast. Now I've got a decent-sized Murktide Regent coming. Yeah, that's fine. I think with my opponent's mana as constrained as it is and the number of 2/3 drops that are in their deck, I think my Daze will find a home. There's a Trop. Ponder's fine. I'll take some chip damage. I am okay playing this. 1, 2, 3. I will leave the extra cards in there. I don't need to hardcast this Daze for any reason. Sometimes this eats a single mana Swords to Plowshares. There's a 2 mana Leyline Binding. That beats my Daze. That's fine. And another land drop for my opponent. I take some more chip damage. Daze is not what I'm looking for here. It might be an awkward build your own Force of Will. We'll see. Alright. Daze has found a target finally. I'll take 1. My opponent loses yet another land. Brainstorm is great. I will have 4 cards in graveyard. I can set up a flipped Delver and then play Murktide Regent a little later. That's probably fine. Back to Basics is always the second card down. I don't need it. I can also just play Murktide Regent this turn and keep the Daze. The 5/5. Keeping my opponent from resolving a 3-drop that can take over the game is kind of a big deal. I'm going to keep Murktide Regent and Daze, even though that means that this Delver is significantly less good. This is going to be worse versus Swords, which I don't think my opponent currently has in hand. Famous last words. Yep, that's fine. New Underground Sea. I'll eat 1 damage, which is fine. I just gained a bunch of life. I unfortunately know that my Delver is not flipping next turn. We have a Back to Basics that is not super good here. I'm not going to block the Orc. Down to 10. Cycling Lorien Revealed. This probably gets my opponent a red source. No, it's a green source. You've got beans? Oh, or a bargain? It's a bargain. I mean, all day. All day. That's worth another land for me. Turn 9 days, still good somehow. I will not reveal that. Do I want to cast it? I don't think I want to cast it. My opponent has some looting effects in their deck. Opponent is at 16. 6 of their lands permanently tapped. I will take 1. Going to 9. Yes, I will absolutely flip to Ponder. Send it. Opponent is at 13. We can Ponder. No Bowmasters can come in response. Unlicensed Hearse? Hearse is okay. Force of Will is pretty dang good. Dismember, so I stop taking damage from the Orc Army token, might actually matter. I'm going to say these cards are good enough. I think I draw Dismember next turn. And Force of Will now. Take 1 again. Go to 8. My Dismember is going to put me to 4. Everything is going okay. Alright, 10. I'll go to their upkeep and Dismember in upkeep. Go to 4. Cool, resolves. So the next scary thing can come down now, but it does not. I'm going to go ahead and go for my attack, and I will play Unlicensed Hearse in second main. I don't know how many untapped black sources my opponent is going to have left. I know they have a Xander's Lounge, but that one enters tapped, which is problematic here. Send in for 3 more. 7. Throw down Hearse, which I would not fight over if my opponent were to fight over it. And I don't think I activate this immediately. That's another Misty. So, let's see what my opponent is cooking. I don't know how many valid mana sources they are going to have left. Oh, that is Cycle Xander's Lounge at the cost of a land. That's tough. Alright, now I will start eating instants and sorceries out of my opponent's graveyard. I think starting with Swords to Plowshares and Bargain. My opponent, I suppose, could have Mystic Sanctuary and fetch in response, put it on top, and then I have Force of Will to back that up. That did not happen. Basis Field is okay. Not going to say it's an amazing draw, but most things are killing me at this point. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, I'm not taking my opponent off of a Murktide Regent count. I think I'm just going to chill with this for a second. All right, here is a fetch. There is a Savannah. There is a Carpet of Flowers. I think I got to counter that one. I think that just lets the floodgates open up. We got the full-on dang from the opponent in chat. I mean, the Leyline Binding is obviously good. That is going to keep my opponent from dying in the short term and take out the Delver. But I will have this Unlicensed Hearse, and as soon as I can crew it, my opponent dies. Or as soon as I find a Brazen Borrower to bounce one of these, my opponent also dies. Oh, it's just another Delver. This is crew 2, unfortunately. Now I think I am eating enough stuff from my opponent's graveyard that I just keep eating. Yeah? Throw down a Delver. So the blue for Murktide Regent is probably a little tough also. So, Delver trigger. Will not reveal Scalding Tarn. I will attack my opponent for 1. Now this is a very big 1 point of damage because my opponent now can no longer fetch. I will continue to eat instants and sorceries for smaller and smaller Murktide Regents. This is getting huge. I actually am going to play Scalding Tarn here because if I see something I don't like with my Delver trigger, I can fetch it away next turn. Never mind. Draw? Wasteland. That I will not play. Again, I will keep eating from my opponent's graveyard. 23 more draw steps, and my opponent mills out. Alright. Pondering into True Name Nemesis would be awesome. Brazen Borrower. If Brazen Borrower resolves, I get to attack with Unlicensed Hearse, which is pretty sweet. I think I will go ahead and do that. Fetch to clear. Grab an island. Now, I don't actually want to bounce Leyline Binding here. I just want to crew my vehicle and attack immediately. There's no soft permission spells I should need to play around for a creature. I already have a Daze covered. Spell Pierce doesn't matter, so I think I just cast this. And crew. Yeah. 10-10. Oh, we have gotten the GGs. Wild game. Opponent at the exact same time said wild game. No, that was a great one. I think that was a very skill-intensive match. I wonder what was left in my opponent's hand at the end of game. For example, I wonder if they have a Reb in hand that did not become or became unusable as that game went on. This was a very prolonged game of resource management, and there were some times, maybe I would say early on, I think it was turn 18. I don't know when it happened. There were maybe times where my opponent was not under enough pressure that they had to play some spells when they did. I let a lot of things go with Daze and then got some premium targets later. My opponent, like, Daze tested me a bunch of times with things like Brainstorms and Ponders that I just didn't bite on. And then I got things like Narset and Bowmasters, I think, with them instead. Very good game. Legacy is great. Today's video is sponsored by Moxfield.com. If you want to see upcoming sets, if you want to understand commander brackets, or if you just want an awesome place to store all, and I mean all, of your deck lists, Moxfield is the place. You can organize all of your decks by folders, and you can even change the views. You like visual, they've got that. You like text, they've got that. Check out my Moxfield Pro Field if you want to see all, and I mean all, of the decks that I've been cooking up. This Delver card seems pretty okay, folks. Opponent says hello. I say Delver with Daze backup. The traditional greeting of my people. It's not of my people, let's be real. I'm not a Delver enthusiast. I Daze it. I Daze it. Yeah, I Daze it. You don't get that. Now Delver blind flips to Force of Will. Delver blind flips to Daze. Yeah. Yeah, we'll take that. We'll take that. So now I have 3 counter spells backing up this Delver. Seems decent. And something that's not scary, I can just let resolve and Brazen Borrower it out of play. Ooh, blue. Do you have Mockingbird over there? I just bounced that one, right? I just bounced that one. Yeah. End it. 13. Go ahead. And we'll Brazen Borrower that out of play. Oop. Note that counter spells could happen here. Daze. My deck is so removal light. I might need to fight here, even though I don't really want to. Oh, shit. Okay, I mean, that's happening. I was literally about to say, the nightmare scenario here is if my opponent has a mid-combat Swords to Plowshares around my Daze. Holy shit. Oh, wow. That was rough. This is still recoverable with something like a Murktide Regent, but this is very, very bad. Yes. No. No. You do not get 2 of those. Their last card is Daze, I riot. Okay, good. As double Ocelot Pride triggers at end of turn would have just, frankly, been too much. These aren't what I'm looking for. Let's shuffle. That's not what I'm looking for. I will preordain. That's not it. We want a large threat. Force of Will is not a large threat. I might have to Desperation cast it on the next thing that my opponent plays. Yeah, nope. But this card is going to self-spiral. I need like a True Name Nemesis, a Murktide Regent, something like that in the next few turns. I'll take Ponder for more looks. Ponder again. I don't think I want Ponder and a land here. I think I'm going to take the random draw. There's a Spell Pierce that I'm not ready to use. Uh-oh. Yeah, there's the Mockingbird, which is a new Ocelot Pride. I imagine at this point, I just outright lose to this. I think I'm comfortable conceding here. This is where that pile of gut shots looks good. EE on 1 is great. Oh, I don't have Murktides in game 1. Or sorry, I don't have True Names in game 1. Stern Scolding, very mana efficient here. Stasis Field may be good enough. This I'll think about. Back to Basics is pretty bad in this matchup. Those get pulled. That's the first thing I do. That gives me probably these 4 cards, and now I just think, do I want True Names as something that just can push damage through a wall of cats, / can just sit there and wall my opponent's board? I think I do. think that probably means I go down on like Fluster and Spell Pierce. Pierce is fine for the Swords to Plowshares type cards, but it misses a lot. This is a medium hand. Medium might be good enough here. I'm going to lead on the Preordain. True Name is great. I will take that. It makes this daze slightly more awkward. I think I just accept that. Yep, I'm just going to attempt the 1-for-1 trade here, and then Wasteland my opponent, I think, even though I have a True Name. Yeah, definitely Wasteland my opponent then. Whether or not I do the second Wasteland, though, is more interesting. My opponent and I probably have similar amounts of land in our respective decks, so that one resolves. If my opponent does not have more land and I Wasteland them off of this, the Guide of Souls does not do a lot. I think I am going to go for it. This is a high-risk, high-reward play, I think. Because if my opponent just has the next land, they can just come down and play their Ocelot Pride or whatever, and I can't immediately answer it. Alright. Maybe I am keeping them off of a critical 2-drop. Ponder. Third land is fine. Delver is okay. I think this is okay. So I can play a Delver that guaranteed flips next turn while leaving up Brainstorm. I honestly might just end up Brazen Borrowering things out of play. So unfortunately, my opponent hit 4 natural land drops in a row. That's not great for me. Yes. Luckily, I am relatively wasteland proof while playing this deck. Unluckily for me, this flies and the other one can fly soon. So this is a Delver that will always flip. Is that better or worse than just Brazen Borrower bounce one of these? Brazen Borrower bounce might be better. Brainstorm's fine. I'm going to let those triggers resolve and then attempt to bounce, I believe, the original Guide of Souls. I don't want to bounce this and have my opponent be able to make their own copy of True Name Nemesis. That would be pretty annoying. This might just be Delver and Brazen Borrower bounce the other one, rather than slam the True Name immediately. I think I am into that. So there's Delver. I think I do this before my opponent gets another look at a daze. That is a Force of Will pitching a Force of Will. That's Ocelot Pride, unfortunately. That's occurring. I'll take 1 from this, and then Ocelot Pride does its thing. Delver trigger. Yes, I will reveal Force of Will. So this flies. This can fly. I really want this True Name Nemesis in play. I think it makes more sense to hold up Brazen Borrower. Yeah, I think I am no longer the beatdown. I'm playing defensively. I think I'm going to end up doing a Brazen Borrower bounce, Force of Will on the way back down, and then trying to stick True Name. Alright, there's Ocelot Pride. We'll have my opponent pay. Give it flying. Then after it has flying, I will Petty Theft it back to hand. Then they'll cast it again. And then I will Force of Will, junking that Brainstorm. And then hopefully the opponent just doesn't have more mana to deploy stuff. Cool. Now I'm going to slam this True Name. Protection from you. With no bonus energy here, I think I can go ahead and attack this turn. Try to take the role of the aggressor back. It can flip-flop very quickly. I have 2 more 3/1 flyers that can just come down. Fuck. Oh, that's so good for my opponent. But until they have the extra lands, this doesn't matter that much. When they get the extra lands, ooh, it starts to get spooky quickly. So now, do I want to just attack for 6, play another flyer, attack for 9, or do I want to try to fish for a counterspell to back this stuff up? A Wasteland is also batshit insane here, honestly. I think that means that I fish. Yes. Yeah. No shuffle. Going in for 6. 12 all. No. Absolutely not. We didn't get Force of Willed back, which is great. I will take 3 back. At 8. I will send back for 6, which is presumably lethal next turn. I'm going to hold Brainstorm in case something very, very scary happens. All right, that's a Johnny. That is 4 energy. More importantly, that is 4 life, bringing my opponent to 10. So I can crack back for 9. 9 is not 10. I can brainstorm and hit Daze as one of my cards that are 2 down. And that more or less will win me the game. I think I have to do that. Spell Snare is amazing. Wow. So Spell Snare on Ajani doesn't literally end the game because my opponent has a fuck flag blocker. I think that probably does it for me. You were just trying to keep my opponent off of resources. And I think that was kind of everything coming through. I'm not going to be able to block these cats at any time, or I probably lose to the Planeswalker. Opponent goes all out, and I imagine that they will just give the other Guide of Souls flying here. Yeah. And my opponent can shift defensively with a 3/4 flyer as well. I don't know how I get out of this. Assuming that my opponent... Well, okay, let's assume they play nothing. I can block 2 creatures, take 1, 2, 3, and that is lethal. I guess Brazen Borrower could keep me alive, but that's not working towards winning. What about Murktide Regent as a hit here? Blooded Strand, not gonna do it. That was a great game. GG. Okay. No land. No keep. Land. Keep. So Island Delver, pass. With Force of Will, maybe pitching Brazen Borrower or Ponder, depending on how things look. I'll have some flexibility if I keep the fetch land, so I will probably get rid of Island number 2, like so. Delver's been doing pretty well for us so far. See if that trend continues. Ancient Tomb. Yes. Sundering Eruption under there. Is that good for me? Does that just deny my opponent a mana? Pretty sure that just denies my opponent a mana. I think that resolves. Delver trigger. I will not reveal Wasteland. Now I might want to Brazen Borrower this out of play. And the Ponder becomes the thing that gets pitched to Force of Will. 17? We'll see. Things can change a lot. Like, if my opponent doesn't have another land drop, for example, I can just bounce Chrome Mox out of play. And that ends up being very strong as well. They do have another land drop. Broadside. That's a good card. I think I'm going to go ahead and Force of Will that, pitching Ponder. Brazen Borrower, the Blood Moon out of play. Wasteland, City of Traders. And then once I have my second island, I don't care about Blood Moon anymore. Cool. Delver trigger. Oh, things have changed. Back to basics. Pretty damn strong here. It does mean that I don't get to cast this super easily, but denying my stompy opponent 4 mana is much better than the 2 mana that I was planning on doing. We'll see how this shakes out. It is very easy for them to just continue to hit soul lands. But this deck doesn't actually play that many basic mountains, despite being a mono-red deck. Most people are really, really hot on the MDFC lands because they pitch to Fury and go under Chrome Mox. But that comes at the downside of like being non-basic lands for things like Wasteland and Back to Basics. All right, there is a Fable. Fable is really good because that is mana through Back to Basics. Delver trigger. I will flip to Brainstorm. Absolutely. I guess if I hit another Delver, I want to do this now. Or if I hit like Preordain to get rid of these cards. Ponder. Ponder is okay. I will cast it immediately. I think I'm looking for a Murktide Regent now. Another Brazen Borrower. I think I am good with drawing a Brazen Borrower and land. Send it. Although, honestly, sometimes I just play Brazen Borrower into Brazen Borrower and ignore Petty Theft. Game could get really weird. All right, 2 junk cards, 2 discard here. Opponent gets their treasure token, which, again, pretty big deal. 16. 2 mana for an unlicensed hearse that is resolving. So, I guess it's a good thing I didn't find that Murktide Regent. Oh, there's something else? Do you have Fury? Do have Fury. Seems good. It takes me 3 combat steps to kill my opponent. Hit for 3, then 6, then 6. I think I am passing the turn either way here. And I'm not sure whether or not I should just take out this token It feels like I should. I'm going to take 2 from this unlicensed hearse here, presumably. Opponent either misses it or wants to keep my graveyard in check. Seems like they want to keep my graveyard in check. I think I have a third card down here I don't like. I don't remember for sure. I'm going to fetch because I think my next card was something like Back to Basics. Okay, Spell Snare probably not doing anything. If my opponent hits another soul land, I think I'm in trouble. They don't hit a soul land. Our clocks are pretty similar. All right, they're going in. So at the end of this turn, we are both going to be at 11. I get the first hit, which is nice. However, my opponent is attacking for 4 and maybe 6 if they hit another creature, even like a spirit guide. So this is uncomfortable. Daze is very good. Opponent is very, very mana light here. But I could end up in a very awkward situation where I play out a Brazen Borrower, and then I daze something, and then Fury eats both of my Brazen Borrowers, and I just lose. Hasty Fury might already kill me, though. I haven't done that math. All right, we're crewing. So I take 4 and go to 7, which is a very important number because my opponent has 6 on board, in theory. So this means that I get to cast this from exile, bring my opponent to 2. They can no longer tap a new Ancient Tomb that is played out. I think I don't cast Brainstorm on my own turn. I think I save that as an emergency or days not covering something. I do have a couple of things like Preordain that I can hit, though. Yeah, maybe the things like Preordain just mean that I cast this now. Spell Snare never matters. Chalice of the Void is not a relevant card at this stage of the game. Another unlicensed hearse doesn't matter. Yeah, so let's go bam, bam. Oh fuck, I don't want to look at fresh cards. An idiot. The difference between 6 and 7 is relevant. Okay, I just did a terrible line because now I don't have the Spell Snare available. Okay, that's just on me. All right, daze it and hope no spirit guide. Fuck! It's spirit guide. So now my opponent crews, attacks for 6, and flings to kill me. Damn, what a tight game. Very, very down to the wire there. I'll show myself out. Great game of Magic there. Okay, so I don't want to play this prolonged back to basics game versus my opponent. That was what my deck gave me the opportunity to do this game, but I would rather stick a True Name or Murktide Regent after countering my opponent's first spell or 2 that they play, and then move on from there. These Hydroblasts are great. This is power or toughness, right? So that's fine. That's going to hit a lot of stuff. And then there becomes a question of, like, how much do I want to respect Chalice of the Void? Like, do I want to bring in EE as a way to clear Chalice as well as, like, Moxen and stuff? Maybe. And, like, Stasis Field is kind of an embarrassing removal spell, but I might end up playing it. So I guess what is not good? Flusterstorm is very bad. Spell Snare is pretty narrow compared to, like, Spell Pierce. I'm going to assume that Preordains end up not in my deck in some capacity, at least being trimmed as just a hedge against Chalice. Maybe I don't want to Stasis Field. Maybe I don't want any Stasis Field. It's pretty slow in a high velocity matchup. Can't play Null Rod for the 1 ring while also playing EE to sweep tokens and Chalice, which is awkward. My opponent had game 1 unlicensed hearse that makes Murktide Regent less reliable too. That's a thing. Maybe unlicensed hearse is important enough that I keep a Spell Snare in there. I'm gonna have a bunch of situational 1-mana counterspells that it's pretty easy for things to line up incorrectly with. This is 1 land with a lot of interaction but no ability to put a threat into play. I don't think this wins. I think this plays like a 7 or 8 turn game of Magic, but I think then my opponent starts sticking Fables and 1 rings and I just have not accumulated any damage on them. I think I will ship this one. It's highly interactive, but I don't have any top end that makes up for me spewing all of these cards. This is medium. I can keep this and try to work towards a giant Murktide Regent, like Murktide backed by Daze, maybe by Force of Negation as well, Bitch Dismember. And I'm looking for additional cantrips and lands. preferably both additional cantrips and lands. This is fine. Ancient Tomb? Romox? I do need blue right now, because both of the lands on top of my deck are fetch lands. The Spirit Guide here would be annoying. Doesn't happen. So now that I know that my opponent is doing this stuff, I probably just fetch and ponder immediately. Now I don't have to counter Blood Moon effects for the remainder of this game. Yeah, I am fine with this. Now I almost certainly just cast a counter spell on something this turn to deploy Murktide Regent next turn. There is the One Ring. Dismember is my next draw. Maybe Force of Negation that, keep Brazen Borrower to bounce something out of play. Yeah, excellent. So now we'll drop Murktide, which should be pretty hard to kill. Not impossible. Opponent can be playing some sideboard blasts, but the stuff like Fury isn't going to be good enough. And roughly 2 Murktide Regent hits kills my opponent. Alright, I'll go to Punchies. Send in for 7. This is suspicious. I will pass the turn. I don't think I want to just bounce Chromebox here. My opponent probably has just other cards in hand that aren't super relevant. Sack your land. That's fine. My opponent is then going to follow up with a red removal spell. Oh, yes. That's fine. This might be where I just Brazen Borrower that out of play for mana efficiency. This is already going to be a lethal threat if I draw another land, which I did not. But my opponent is on, let's call it 1.5 mana sources. Another mountain is exactly what my opponent wants. We are chilling. I just need another mana source here. Brainstorm is not what I'm looking for, but will probably make my hand better in some capacity. That's my other mana source for hardcasting this next turn. Let's put back Murktide Regent 2 down. Redraw Ponder next turn. I have Petty Theft and Spell Pierce both available. Game got weird. We are chilling. I'll redraw the Ponder. I'm passing the turn with Threatening Lethal via Brazen Borrower. I'm not doing so with Protection, but I have 2 Brazen Borrowers, so I don't think that's a bad thing. Okay, an opponent is just dead to the Brazen Borrower. Weird game. At the time that I cast my Force of Negation, I valued having both of these 2 cards as flexible options. It may just have been better to keep the second counterspell by Force of Negation and then have Force of Will backing that up afterwards. That might have just been better than what I did. What I did worked. Doesn't mean it was optimal. I'm thinking about whether or not I want to do anything differently. Play draw. Like my snare gets slightly worse if I can't snare Chalice on turn 1, for example. I might turn snare into something that answers the One Ring. I mean, this is pretty good if my opponent doesn't punk me on the first turn. I think I'll keep it, but some of my opponent's better draws here are going to overrun me. I accept. Now, I still have this to play towards. I am, I think, going to just yeet my Ponder into the Chalice, despite the fact that I can maybe bounce it out of play. Because I think there is a very good chance that I just end up behind on tempo, and fueling the extra cards in graveyard matters. I also made a mistake this turn. I was supposed to do the fetch land, because then I don't have to interact with a Magus of the Moon or Blood Moon. That's a really bad mistake. A really, really bad mistake. Because that changes the likelihood of me being able to cast Brazen Borrower on my turn 2. There's a Spirit Guide, and that's a Fable Around Days. So that is resolving. Now my dazes in hand are very likely to be bad for the remainder of the game. This is not going well. I probably don't get to Hydroblast as a clean answer to that Fable. That would involve me taking that Chalice of the Void out of play this turn, which I might end up doing. I don't think I'm going to just bounce the token here. I think the mana denial train has already passed. I think we're now going into make a big Murktide Regent 2 to 3 turns from now, and hope that my opponent's deck does not continue to present threats. Fuck. Okay. That's happening. And I am unhappy about it. Now I think I have to use mana. An EE for 0 would be pretty cool, clearing these 4 permanents, which makes using the Brazen Borrower really weird. I think I'm going to Petty Theft this Goblin Shaman anyway. There's a Murktide Regent. So I think we are on Cast Delver, Hold Priority, Daze Delver, Bounce an Island. Don't pay for Delver. It's already getting double countered. There's 4 cards in my graveyard. Next turn, I will play Murktide Regent, hopefully doing some of this stuff on my opponent's turn. I only have 2 instants in graveyard right now. I would like to play a slightly larger Murktide than that. I guess I could have Spell Pierced my Daze as well. I've gone deeper with that line than what I did. And I guess I am punished for not doing it. Alright. I will, I think, just take 2 damage from that rather than bounce it. I guess if I bounce it, I can always Daze. This is not overly threatening right now. We're just staring at each other. Okay, that'll do. This gets me a Murktide Regent. Yeah, hopefully I can play the next Murktide Regent, growing the first one. This is unfortunately a dismemberable Murktide Regent, though. Trying to get that out of range of happening, but it didn't work out that way. This day is not likely too relevant to this game anymore. Yeah, that's bad. My opponent just ends up copying that. They nuke my Murktide Regent, and then send a bunch of damage at face. Daze doesn't stop that. Yep. Maybe my hand wasn't good enough on the draw. Maybe I just needed a Force of Will hand. I'm gonna go ahead and concede here. I think my opponent will handily win the game from here. GG. Holy moly, we're off to the races here with a Once Upon a Time. I don't think I am going to just snap Force of Will that in the dark. Alright, Thespian stage, so we've potentially got Dark Depths combo on the horizon. I've got a Wasteland for that. I have an early aggressive threat. I'm gonna let that hit play, and hopefully fight over some things later on. I say hopefully because there are horrible, awful timelines that can happen where my opponent just goes off on turn 3 without needing to play another spell. My Force of Wills and Flusters and stuff don't actually matter. Do I need to Brainstorm right here? If I do, I drop Fluster, but I still have Force of Will. I think the Brainstorm is fine. So back to basics is probably Force of Will fodder here. I'm just probably not getting the 3 mana to cast that. I will put some card 2 down. I'll show my opponent a Dismember. That's not too awful likely to matter. Throw out a Wasteland and attack for 3. 17. Yeah, this is the stuff that I'm worried about. So my opponent can't just go for the combo. I have Wasteland. Do I need Fluster as well? Always attacking for my 3. Opponent's at 14. I could ponder and find a new Wasteland to make me safer. Sure. Brazen Borrower is great. So Delver, Brazen Borrower, Island, no shuffle, make land drop, pass turn. I need to dodge an opposing Wasteland here. Fog is fine. Alright, cool. So now I've got some solid options, and I'm not just outright dead to my opponent finding Wasteland anymore. I think I just pass the turn with all of my mana available. And I have Petty Theft and Flusterstorm available. That is a crop rotation. I don't really know why this is happening. Is my opponent just going to find something like Urza's Saga and try to grind this out? This could be finding a Mazavith, which makes this whole Wasteland situation kind of awkward. I think I'm willing to interact here. Pitch, Preordain, keep all the interaction. Build the storm count for Fluster to be relevant versus another spell that's played out. And if my opponent taps out for something fair-ish, well, I'd feel pretty good about my life. There's a new Dark Depths, that's not surprising to me. That means I can't really use my mana here. New Delver, same old attacks. Opponent is at 8. I think I'll hold both spells available and not play Delver. Opponent going for copying my wasteland. It probably means that I take out the Dark Depths here. Yeah. I still have some things available for if a 2020 were to happen, if there's just a third Dark Depths, which there is. Opponent not going for it. And now they're going for it. I just let it happen. And my days should win this for me. So I will attempt a petty theft. Crop rotation is going to happen in response. I think I fluster that rather than daze. The fluster is more narrow than the daze. Fluster doesn't lose out to Spirit Guide here. Take the 2020 out of play. I don't get to drop a new Delver, but my opponent is still going to be on a 2-turn clock. This is probably fine. Yavimaya. Life from the Loam. No, I think not. And then I just end this with Back to Basics, keeping those tapped. Do I not want to show my opponent Back to Basics? Back to Basics is kind of a bizarro card. I think the Back to Basics just always wins, though. I'm going to play it. I don't want to lose to some random exploration line here, where my opponent gets a couple of lands into play. So, since my opponent has Life from the Loam, Force of Negation becomes reasonable, and Surgical Extraction becomes reasonable. Unlicensed Hearse, not crazy. Disruptor Flute, good. Stasis Field, awkward and weird. I think I'm taking Snare out. Dismember is a little weird. There's things like Endurance out of the sideboard, or potentially Elvish Reclaimer that I need to respect. But it is a card that will just rot in my hand a huge portion of the time. Very, very important when it matters. I've been viewing the Preordains as pretty cuttable. Let's sort this, see what this looks like. This is pretty interactive. Maybe I can go ahead and do that change. That's one more removal spell for a Merit Lage, kind of, if you squint at it funny. And the timing works out. Do I need something like True Name Nemesis in respect of cards like Maze of Ith? Or do I just hope to hit Wasteland or Back to Basics? I think I hope to hit one of those cards. Did I win the die roll? No, I did not. I'm very happy to win that game then. Regardless of what the final record ends up being today, this deck has played good games of Magic. These games are interesting. I might be fighting a little bit of an uphill battle sometimes, but the games are interesting. Yavimaya, Exploration. I might need to just say no to that for tempo, so that I can get my Delver down and have a little time to start finding something like a Wasteland. And this is what I'm talking about how that Dismember is often just going to rot in hand. But when it matters, it is incredibly important. Urza's Saga seems good. I'm good with guaranteeing my flip here with Force of Will backup. Oh, that's great. I think I'm not going to flip my Delver this turn. No, I can't flip 2 Delvers next turn. Okay, then I will... Actually, Delver, I will just pitch the Force of Will, and Well, I actually know that lands aren't coming, huh? Okay, I will probably pitch 1 Brazen Borrower. Reveal Dismember. Go to Punchies. Punchies for 3. And I'll go for Wasteland on Urza's Saga in my opponent's upkeep. I think that's still good to do despite having 2 Brazen Borrowers. I just Force of Will a crop rotation if it happens. A Wasteland. Alright. So I will play my new Delver, hit in for 3, and my next draw step / Delver trigger reveal is going to be a pretty big deal. Saga's back. I'm going to assume that that is pretty bad for me. I don't think I am beating Maze of Ith type cards right now. I'm just going to take that as a positive tempo play. That is a terrible thing to hit there, because that is not a land that lets me cast Petty Theft. It's not anything that interacts with Life from the Loam. It's not anything castable. If I end up having time, I do have 3 instants in graveyard already. I was thinking hard about that Life from the Loam. Okay, they dredge, but don't hit something good. Yes. Oseju. Alright. Delver trigger. I will reveal Brainstorm. So, good crashing in. Otawara. Sure. That's happening. I think I am now going to try to high roll a Brainstorm and hit a land. Excellent. Next turn, I probably cast Brazen Borrower. I can leave Fluster and Dismember open for this turn. I think I'll put Murktide Regent 2 down, Ponder to flip New Delver, or I leave open Dismember and Fluster. I think New Delver that flips is better. Yeah, that Otawara can end up coming back. A lot of this is going to depend on what my opponent has access to via this Urza Saga trigger. Shadow Spear is not immediately scary. Swift, Pithing Needle. That just is playing towards Wasteland not being an out for the combo. That's reasonable. Alright, I don't have Flusterstorm available for that. Tabernacle is rough. That's the sort of thing that I wanted to avoid. My opponent does take it. Yep. That means my spells are much worse. There's an Otawara coming. Yep. I will reveal the Ponder, then pay for both of my creatures. I know I'm drawing that Ponder. I know my next card is Murktide Regent. And I know that Otawara can stop one of these two creatures. So now the question is, can my opponent do something that stops the other Delver? I have enough islands in my deck that my opponent can't Ghost Quarter me out. New Urza Saga. Oof. That is the concession. That was tight. We did not have very much time left there. GG's. What's our record now? Are we positive? Nah, we're breaking even. But we have a chance to go positive. Okay. We don't have our beloved Delver of Secrets, but I have a couple of pieces of interaction and some cantrips to hopefully work towards something like a Murktide Regent. Basic, Swamp, and Thoughtseize. You've got it. My guess is I lose a counterspell here. Yeah. That's probably pretty good. So how unfair is my opponent's deck? Like, are we just mono black aggro? Signs pointing to yes. That means this Spell Pierce is worse than I was rating it as. I think I'll still Brainstorm now for mana efficiency. Oh, I hit Daze. That's cool. Let's maybe put back Spell Pierce and Delver, and then just Daze Douthie Voidwalker. And then I can deploy a Delver that I know flips backed by Force of Will, so that we have something like Bowmasters covered. Seems good. It has 4 cards after playing that. Absolutely not. No way. Card is Nutso. Flip to Spell Pierce. Go to Punchies. Punchies. Opponent's at 15. I will Ponder. No! I will Shuffle. Hit a Murktide Regent, which is pretty darn good. So my hope is that my opponent doesn't play something that looks like this turn. Like if they play something that is spell pierceable, like Chef's Kiss, this is perfect. Fuck. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in graveyard already. I think that's happening. Cards on top of my library are just totally random right now. That doesn't do me much good. I will fetch. And Murktide Regent. I think I'm just... Am I trading with this? Or am I just letting my opponent hit me for 4? I think I'm trading with it. I don't have any manipulation to make this better. So this is 3, 4, and 5. To evenly trade with this as of right now. I think I'm going to eat 1 more in case another card type gets added. And let's go with these lands. Opponent doesn't have any fetch lands in graveyard. I'll send in with this. My Spell Pierce is not doing me any favors right now. I think this is scary enough, and I have so few answers to it that I just trade. It means that my Delver's not the fastest clock in the world, unfortunately, and my opponent does have some things like Reanimate that can make this backfire. Lake of the Dead! Holy fucking shit, it's mono black Reanimator, and my Spell Pierce does not interact with that Grizzlebrand. Uh-oh! Alright. Yeah. GG. Alright, what do we have? Curse, Cage, Surgical. EE on 1 is not great. Stasis Field is a thing. Turn Scolding is maybe good enough. 4x back to basic out versus my opponent's mono black Reanimator deck. Luster probably out. Most of the things that I'm going to care about are going to be creatures. This is something I can think about as well. Think against what is probably a Bowmaster deck. I'm going to go down 2 of those for these. Alright. Opening hand is fine. My wastelands are not ideal. Hopefully I just blind flip this Delver, I dismember a creature, I bounce another creature, and life is good. Yeah. I've already hedged against Bowmasters slightly. Alright, 3rd mana was wasted. You're a card late, bud. I believe I'm willing to take 1 hit from Bowmasters to see if my opponent plays something scarier on their turn that I might want to dismember instead. For example, I might want to kill a Douthie Voidwalker if it came down. Be another Bowmaster. In which case I will answer 1 and have to force the other. It is not looking good for the home team here, folks. Again, I think I am just taking a hit from this to see if I need to Brazen Borrower something scarier out of play. Now, do I have to do this? I don't really want to. But with single blue mana, I can't like Spell Pierce and do another cool thing in the same turn. I think I'm game. Doesn't feel good. Alright, I hit my other blue mana, which makes me regret taking my line. But maybe I just get to play this, and my opponent doesn't have another Bowmaster. Ashiok, Dream Render, the Spice. The spell resolves. And we're chilling now. I'll put Brazen Borrower into play. I'm in a very low agency situation. We'll do what we can do. I guess that makes Force of Will hard castable, which keeps Spell Pierce more live. Alright, we're chilling. Surgical Extraction. I do that on Bowmasters, because Bowmasters is really good for my opponent right now. I don't think I'm going to do it. My opponent could be just trying to save up for an Entomb Reanimate situation that beats me. This is very nerve-wracking. I don't feel good about whatever is happening. I feel slightly better with that draw, but surely this is bad for me. Okay, I mean, I Force a Will. No, I Brazen Borrower bounce that. What am I talking about? Force a Will it later. Fetch. Yeah. Petty Theft. Cast. I'll intend on attacking for 6. Send it. Opponent's at 5. Do I Surgical Bowmasters because Bowmasters stops me from presenting lethal next turn? No, it's still a 2-turn clock. I think it's fine. Oh my god, we just won. I still have to win another game. That was lucky. I was floundering. I could make some concessions for being on the draw and board in something like Force of Negation. My Spell Pierces unquestionably get worse when I am on the draw. What about Snare? I think Snare's too good. I think I'm going to get rid of Spell Pierces on the draw for Force of Negation. Yes. I have multiple cards that are good against the Reanimator side of the deck. I have a threat. I have 2 mana. No immediate play from my opponent. I think I will lead on, I guess, Fetch Land, because my opponent has showed me Ashiok. And not getting to use this as a blue source would be a really big deal. I give up a Brainstorm Shuffle for this, but hopefully my hand is just okay anyway. Douthie Voidwalker. Yes. Delver of Secrets. I think I'm going to Brainstorm now and see if I can just flip this Delver. Let's bury a Wasteland, flip Delver to Ponder, and play out this Delver. I'm willing to give my opponent a hit for 3. Cards that I have seen so far this game don't have me using my graveyard. Unmask pitching a Grave Titan. I'll lose one of these 2 cards here depending on what the rest of my opponent's hand looks like. I lose the Brazen Borrower. Yeah, that's annoying. But now my Grafdigger's Cages and Surgicals aren't doing anything cool. This turn probably has to be boring, unfortunately, as I just try to find some new threat. True Name? I'll need to find an answer to Douthie, but this is pretty cool. I think I'm going to go ahead and put that in hand immediately. And I might actually use Surgical Extraction on my Flooded Strand to shuffle. There's the punish. There's the punish for being cute. Alright, True Name. You've got one fucking job here, bud. You've got one job, and it is to stay glued to my hand. Here is my hand. Stay glued to it. Fuck. We're dead. I can't beat my own True Name. My opponent just puts that in off Douthie Voidwalker, and I am fucked. And now I know that I'm drawing that land, too. I have to do this to shuffle that other land. Not playing towards Murktide Regent right now. I'm going to take 4 in this combat. I'm at 7. I'm dead in 2 combat steps, assuming no other cards. That is an Ashiok. And my graveyard is gone. I can ponder freely. Shut off Bowmasters. Nope. I think that's the point where I am effectively dead, and I will say GG. That was a great league with a bunch of tense games and pretty good gameplay. I'm happy with this. Alrighty, let's wrap this up here. Overall thoughts on the deck list. I give it a B. This was a solid deck list that was capable of playing games of Magic when built around a certain constraint. I think 4 back to basics is way too many for a deck like this. Like, this back to basics is coming at the cost of maybe like the 4th Murktide Regent, another piece of interaction. Like, I would be pretty happy playing 2 or 3 of them. I think 4 is too many. It is very much a called shot, and when they are going to be good, it will absolutely win you the game. But maybe it shouldn't even be in the main deck. Maybe it belongs in the sideboard of this deck. I don't have very much experience playing mono blue tempo to know for sure. But I think for trying to build a deck that has 4x back to basics in the main deck, I think this is a very good way to go. I think you either go something like this, or you do a blue-white control deck. But I think it's a tough ask in the current metagame to be doing blue-white control specifically and like not playing up the Beanstalk and Rakshasa's Bargain. So I think I like the direction that I took this one. You're definitely jumping through hoops with your removal. The 4x Brazen Borrower did a really good job as serving as a band-aid for my lack of removal. But I was often having to like jump through hoops to bounce something and then counter it on the way back down afterwards. I really like white removal in this current metagame. I think it is so important to just permanently answer something, preferably for 1 or 2 mana, with your Source to Plowshares, Leyline Bindings, Path to Exiles, stuff that look like that. Pretty happy with the sideboard mix overall. I feel like I covered most of my bases. And we played good Magic today. I am happy with this league. Hope you are too. If you have any thoughts, throw them down in the comments below. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. See ya!